I died on August 14th, 2023. 11 minutes. That is a documented fact. It is in the medical record at the hospital. It is in the paramedics' report. It is in the discharge paperwork that my daughter keeps in a manila folder in her kitchen drawer, because she is the kind of person who keeps those things organized. 11 minutes of clinical death, and then I was back. And I have spent the time since then trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with what I saw while I was gone. I want to be honest with you about something before I say anything else. I did not want to make this video. I am 71 years old, and I grew up in a household where you did not say things you could not prove, and you did not seek attention. And you did not stand up in front of people and tell them the world was about to hurt them unless you were absolutely certain it was your job to say it. I am absolutely certain it is my job to say it. That is the only reason I am here. My name is Carol Ann Whitfield. I spent 24 years as a county emergency management coordinator in Benton County, Arkansas. If you don't know what that job is, it means I was the person who figured out which areas would flood, which infrastructure would fail, which roads would be impassable, and how to move people before any of that happened. I wrote evacuation plans. I attended FEMA trainings. I sat in rooms with engineers and county commissioners and argued about risk corridors and budget allocations and what it actually means when a levee has not been inspected in 6 years. I was not a dramatic person. I was a practical one. I believed in data, in maps, in preparation, and in the irreplaceable value of knowing the truth about a situation before the situation becomes a crisis. Before I go any further, if you found this account and something in the first minute made you stay, I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel right now before you hear the rest. Not as a formality, because this channel exists specifically to carry accounts like mine. People who came back from clinical death with something specific, something that cannot be explained away, something they were told to bring back. There are others here. People with professional backgrounds, with documented deaths, with the same weight I am carrying. If what I am about to tell you matters to you, those accounts will matter to you too. Subscribe so you are here when they arrive. And when you finish listening today, I want to ask you to leave a comment with one word, the name of the state where you or someone you love currently lives. Just the name, nothing else. I want to know who is in this room with me. I tell you all of that because I need you to understand what kind of person I was when this happened. I was not someone who expected visions. I was not someone who believed in them, if I am honest. I was a Methodist who attended church regularly and believed in God in the general way that people do when they have seen enough of the world to know that human beings did not build all of this. But I was deeply skeptical of anyone who claimed a direct personal communication from the divine. I thought those people were either grieving or mistaken or looking for an audience. I want you to hold that in your mind as I tell you what happened to me on August 14th. It was a Monday morning. I had been up since 5, which is normal for me. I had my first cup of coffee standing at the kitchen window, watching the light come up over the tree line, which I have done every morning I can remember. I sat down at the kitchen table with my second cup. I had a grocery list I was working on. My daughter was coming for dinner on Wednesday, and I was planning to make a pot roast. That is the kind of morning it was, ordinary in every possible way. I was thinking about whether I had enough carrots. Then I felt something I have never felt before or since, The closest I can come to describing it is this. It felt like a key turning in a lock somewhere behind my sternum. Not painful, not alarming, just a turning. And then a door, if that makes sense. And then I was not at my kitchen table anymore. What happened medically is that I had a massive cardiac event. My heart stopped. I found out later that my daughter had planned to stop by that morning to drop something off which she had not told me about, which was unusual and which I do not believe was a coincidence. She found me in the chair at the kitchen table. She called 911. The paramedics worked on me. I was clinically dead for 11 minutes before they got a heartbeat back. I was resuscitated in the ambulance and spent 4 days in the intensive care unit. My cardiologist told my daughter, in those careful words that doctors use when they are trying not to say something outright, that the outcome was not what he would have expected given the duration. My coffee cup did not spill. I know that because I watched it from above the table. I want to say that again because I understand how it sounds, and I want you to hear it precisely. When I left my body, I was above the kitchen. I could see myself in the chair. I could see the table. I could see the coffee cup sitting exactly where I had left it, still upright, still half full. I noticed that detail with the calm, observational part of my brain, the part that spent 24 years noticing things that other people walked past. The cup did not spill. I registered that as information. I was already somewhere else, and I was still taking notes. One of the paramedics said something to my daughter during the resuscitation. I will not repeat it here, because it involves my daughter, and I have not asked her permission to share it in this context. But when she told me, weeks later, when I was home and recovered, and we were finally talking about what had happened, when she told me what he had said, and I repeated it back to her before she could finish the sentence, her face went very still. And she said, "Mom, you were dead." And I said, "I know." And we sat with that for a long time. What I am about to tell you now is the reason I came back, or at least the reason I was sent back. I have had 2.5 years to think about the difference between those two things, and I am still not entirely sure they are different. What I know is that what I was shown while I was gone was not shown to me so that I could keep it. It was shown to me so that I could give it to you. And I mean that specifically, you, the person watching this right now. What happened when I left my body was not what I expected. I had a general picture in my mind of what dying would be: the white light, the tunnel, the sense of peace, the deceased relatives waiting. I want to be clear. What I experienced was not that picture. What I experienced was something I can only describe as a review, not a gentle summary, a complete accounting. Everything I had spent 24 years doing was laid out in front of me, and I mean that as literally as I can make it. Every evacuation plan I had filed, every risk assessment, every meeting where I had presented data about a vulnerable corridor and watched the people across the table nod and move on to the next agenda item. Every time I had identified a genuine threat and documented it, and then watched it get classified as low priority because it was not convenient. The review was not judgment. It did not feel like punishment. It felt like, and I have used this word 100 times since coming back because it is the most accurate word I have, it felt like a briefing. I understood, in a way that did not require explanation, that everything I had spent my career learning was being organized in front of me for a purpose. Not in retrospect, not as memory, as preparation. As if whoever was responsible for what was happening to me knew exactly what kind of mind I had and had decided to speak to me in the language I already knew. Maps, corridors, risk assessments, vulnerability profiles. That was my language. And what was about to be shown to me would be given to me in that language, so that I could not dismiss it as symbolic or poetic, or the product of an overwhelmed mind reaching for comfort. During that review, I saw a map I had drawn in 2009, a risk corridor I had identified that crossed several state boundaries. I had filed it. It had been noted. I had been told it was speculative, that the variables I was weighting were not standard, that my methodology was outside the accepted framework. I had accepted that and moved on, because that is what you do in a bureaucracy when you are one voice and the committee has made its decision. Seeing that map again, in that place, I felt something I do not have a word for. Not vindication exactly, more like it was real. It was always real, and now I was about to be shown how real. The review stopped. I understood I was about to receive something new. What I received was not given to me all at once. It came in sequence, deliberately, the way a briefing is structured by someone who knows how to communicate with a person who processes information the way I do. First, I was shown the nature of what was coming. Then I was shown where. Then I was shown when. And I want to take you through each of those in the same sequence, because the sequence matters, and because rushing through it would be a disrespect to what was shown, and to you for being here to receive it. What I was shown about the nature of what is coming I can describe best with a word from my professional life: convergence. I was shown convergence, not a single disaster, not one event with a clear cause and a defined impact zone. I was shown multiple systems, infrastructure, environmental, civil, failing in the same geographic windows at the same time, in overlapping sequence, in a way that would prevent the kind of organized response that emergency management depends on. The reason we can respond to a flood is that the roads are intact. The reason we can respond to a power failure is that communication systems are functional. What I was shown was the specific shape of collapse when those redundancies are not there, when the systems that back up the systems are also gone. I want you to picture something, not metaphorically. Actually, close your eyes if you need to and picture this. It is a Tuesday morning in one of the states I am going to name in a moment. Someone's coffee maker is on. Their phone is at 40%. They have been meaning to call their adult child, who lives 2 states away, but they've been putting it off because there never seems to be a good time. The power goes out, not a flicker, out. The coffee maker stops mid-cycle. The phone starts draining because it is searching for a signal it cannot find. They go to the car. The car's charging system is integrated with a grid that is no longer functioning normally. Now picture the 3rd day of that morning. Not the first day, when people are inconvenienced and calling their neighbors and assuming it will be resolved. The 3rd day, when the grocery stores are closed and the gas stations are not pumping, and the hospitals are running on generators that were designed for 48 hours of use and are now being asked to do more. That is not a dystopian fantasy. That is what I was trained my entire career to prevent. And that is what I was shown. I did not see this as a distant possibility. I saw it as a sequence of events that was, in some sense I cannot fully articulate, already in motion. And then, one at a time, I was shown which states. I need you to stay with me here. I need you to hear the next part the way I was meant to deliver it, clearly, specifically, without softening it into something more comfortable than it is. I was not shown a general region. I was not shown a type of geography. I was shown state shapes. Outlines I recognized immediately because I had spent 24 years working with maps. And they were shown to me in sequence, each one held in front of me long enough to register, long enough for me to be certain. The 6 states I was shown were Florida, Texas, California, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Illinois. I want to tell you my reaction when I saw them, because my reaction matters, and because I think it will matter to you. I did not accept the list immediately. 2 of those states surprised me professionally, meaning that within my own expert understanding of vulnerability profiles, I would not have included them at the top of a risk assessment for this kind of convergent failure. One of them I wanted to argue with. I did argue with it, or something like arguing happened, which is a strange thing to describe, but it is what occurred. I asked, as directly as I am capable of asking anything, whether I had understood correctly. The shapes were shown to me again. I asked about time frame. The answer was specific. Before the heat of summer arrives in 2026, I have spent 2.5 years hoping I misunderstood. I have gone back over it in my mind hundreds of times. I have looked for the interpretation that lets me be wrong. I have not found it. And I am someone who spent a career being paid to find alternative interpretations, to look for the gap in the logic, to ask whether the data could mean something other than what it appears to mean. I have applied every professional tool I have to finding a way out of what I was shown. Now I want to tell you about the timeline, because this is where it stops being a vision and starts being an instruction. What I was shown, and this is the part that has kept me awake more than any other part, was that summer 2026 is not the moment when destruction begins. It is the moment when the conditions become irreversible. The window for leaving is before then. The movement of the events I was shown may already be underway. The point at which people can still change their situation, geographically, logistically, in terms of their physical safety, that point has a closing date, and that date is approaching. I want to give you a picture for what irreversible felt like in that place, because feelings in that place were not feelings the way we mean here. They were information. Irreversible felt like driving toward a bridge on a road you know well, in a landscape you've driven through 100 times, and then understanding, too late if you aren't paying attention, that the bridge is already gone, not bombed, not closed, not under construction, gone. And the road ends at the edge of where the bridge was, and there is no other road, and you are past the point where turning around accomplishes what turning around would have accomplished an hour ago. I spent 24 years in emergency management, and I can tell you that the hardest thing in this work, the thing that causes the most preventable suffering, is not the disaster itself. It is the window. The window when people know something is wrong, and they tell themselves there is still time to decide. And then the window closes. And then we are in the disaster, And we are moving people in conditions that should have been preparation conditions. And every hour of response work costs what 3 hours of preparation would have cost. And some of what could have been saved is now not savable. That is the thing I was shown in terms of this timeline. The window is real. It is measurable. I came back to tell you this. That is not a dramatic statement. That is the most accurate statement I can make about why I am alive and sitting in front of a camera. When I was on the other side, in that place that I do not have language for, except to say that it was more real than anything I have experienced in 71 years of living, I was given a reason for returning. It was not general, it was specific. A woman who spent 24 years drawing risk maps, who knew how to read geographic vulnerability, who had professional credibility in exactly the domain of what was being shown, was the appropriate vessel for this specific information. I use the word vessel deliberately because that is what it felt like. Not chosen in the sense of special, assigned in the sense of functional. There was a job. I had the tools for it. I was sent back to do it. I did not do it right away. I want to be honest about that. I came home from the hospital and I sat with this for 8 months without telling anyone except my daughter. And even with her, I was incomplete. I told her I had seen something. I did not tell her what. I filled notebooks. I drew maps that I then turned face down on my desk because I did not know what to do with them. I was afraid, not of what I had seen, but of what it would cost to say it. I am a practical woman from a small town in Arkansas, and I know what people do with women who say they received a prophecy from Jesus. I know the look. I have given that look. I did not want to become someone who received that look. Then, in the spring of 2025, one of the things I had seen, a specific event, a specific kind of infrastructure failure in a region I had identified, occurred. I will not name the event precisely because I am not in a position to verify everything around it publicly, but I had written a description of it in my notebook with a date range. The event fell within that range. When it happened, I went and found the notebook. I sat with it. I called my daughter and I said, "I need to talk to you about something I should have told you a year ago." She came over. I showed her the notebook. She built this channel. I want to stop for a moment. I want you to actually stop with me. You are watching this in March of 2026. That is inside the window I was told about. If you are in Florida, Texas, California, Louisiana, Tennessee, or Illinois, or if someone you love is in those states, you are in the window right now, not approaching it, in it. I am not telling you this to frighten you. Fear has never been useful in emergency management, and it is not useful now. I am telling you this the way I would tell a county commissioner with a flooded levee. Here is what the data shows. Here is the timeline. Here is what needs to happen before the window closes. Here is what I carry every day since coming back. I carry the weight of knowing something that most of the people I love do not know, and being unable to make them understand it the way I understand it, and watching days pass and doing the math. That is not self-pity. It is the specific texture of having information that carries responsibility. Every person I have talked to in the past 2 years, my neighbors, my daughter's friends, my former colleagues, I have looked at them and thought, are they in one of those states? Are they planning to stay? Do they have time? That is what knowing something like this does to you. It does not make you special. It makes you accountable. This is what I need to say to you directly, and I need you to hear it as being said to you specifically, because I believe it is. If you have family in those 6 states, and you have been putting off a difficult conversation, the one where you say, I think we should talk about where you're living and whether it's where you should be. This is the moment to have that conversation. Not next month, this week. I know how those conversations go. I have been in the emergency management version of that conversation dozens of times. It is awkward. People resist. Nobody wants to be told that where they live might not be safe. But the conversation that happens now, in a kitchen, over coffee, while there is still time to make decisions, that conversation is the only version that matters. Every version that happens after the window closes is just grief with a different shape. Here is the concrete thing I am asking you to do. Just one thing. This week, I want you to have that conversation. Call the person who lives in one of those states, or have the conversation with yourself if you are the one in those states. Ask, if I had to leave, how would I do it? Where would I go? What would I need? What would I leave behind? Those questions are not paranoia. They are the questions I was trained to help people answer before they needed to answer them under duress. Write down what comes up when you ask them. You do not have to act on every answer immediately, but know the answers. Because the people who survive disruption are not the ones who are the strongest or the most resourced. You are watching this for a reason. I know that sounds like something people say, but I mean it in the most literal sense I can. I was told, in a place where I had no body and no grocery list, and no reason to doubt what I was being told, that the information I was carrying needed to reach people who would hear it. Not everyone, the ones who were ready to hear it. The fact that you have stayed this long, that you are still here, that something in you did not scroll past this, I believe that is information. I believe you already sent something. I believe that is why you are here, and why this is reaching you now, in March of 2026, inside the window I was told about. If something I shared today reached you, if even one part of it landed in a place that felt like recognition, I would ask you to subscribe to this channel, not because of numbers, because there are more accounts like mine, people who came back carrying specific things they were told to bring back, people with professional backgrounds that make the specificity of what they saw impossible to explain away. In the comments, I want to ask you something specific. What is one thing you have been putting off that you know, in the part of yourself that does not lie to you, that you should do? Not about the states, not about disaster preparation. Just one thing you have been postponing that you know is yours to do. Write it. I came back because there was a job to do, and I had the tools to do it. I have done my best to do it honestly, without exaggeration, without drama, in the plain language I would use if I were standing in front of a county commission with a map and a recommendation, and the weight of knowing what happens when the recommendation is ignored. Whatever is coming, and something is coming, and the timeline I was given is running, I hope this reaches you with enough time to matter. That is all I have been trying to do since I came back. Reach you with enough time for it to matter.